If you never hear the church clock chiming the small hours, it doesn't seem to matter what sleep really is. But if you do, there's a reason for it. And there's always a reason why one child will usually sleep well and another won't. What's the most obvious cause of lying awake hour after hour? Pain? Serious illness? Yes. Or even indigestion, and certainly aches of one kind or another. And then there's insomnia. Here we are, bed lamp burning, book in hand. No, sleep's come at last. Very restless, the kind you hardly realize you've had. Not deep enough to make you feel refreshed in the morning, but still, rest of a kind. If that lorry always went by just after 4 a.m., this probably wouldn't have happened, because it's unfamiliar noises that wake us. But it isn't only noise or discomfort that keeps a person awake, twisting and turning and staring at the ceiling. Mrs. Parkins has lost her handbag. When she went to bring it up to the bedroom for safety, last thing, as she always does, it wasn't there. It wasn't in the house. So, instead of settling down comfortably, she had to worry.
Means going out first thing, getting all behind with the housework. I did have it coming out of Riggs. I must have had it there. Now let me think. Coming out of Riggs, did I go anywhere else? Did I go to the post office afterwards? No. No. Or did I? The bus queue, that's about it. Had the basket on my arm. Could easily have got jolted out. That means phoning the lost property and then the police.
Worry is like a great dark shape which thrusts itself forward in the mind, making sleep impossible. A bright shape can have the same result. Tom Meredith wants to be a professional footballer. One of the Spurs talent scouts was watching yesterday when Tom played a very good game on the wing. Playing a game mentally uses energy. The excitement has certainly kept him awake. And when he does sleep, he'll sleep more deeply, but he won't want to get up in the morning. Mrs. Parkins' worry is also tiring. She knows that if only she could make up her mind to turn her thoughts to pleasanter things, she would soon drop off, and in the morning her trouble wouldn't seem quite so bad. A child doesn't realize this. Children have far more worries and excitements than Mrs. Parkins and Tom Meredith. But they can't just accept the fact that they do need sleep, so they often find it difficult to settle down. Yet sleep is tremendously important for them. A baby often sleeps as much as 20 hours a day, and all young children should pass half their lives like this, whereas we, of course, only spend a third of our lives in bed. What happens to a child during this half of life? Growth and renewal of energy, of course. Rest and grow strong, don't they say? But just as important, mental developments. Part of the sleeping mind is very active.
Look, Billy, firemen.
Billy may not remember this dream when he wakes up, but that doesn't matter. It's helping him, subconsciously, to relate one thing to another. Actuality to make-believe, one effect to another. This kind of thing happens every night to all children. They sleep in countless different positions. One will hardly move at all. Another will get the bedclothes all tangled up. Some like to be tucked in tight and snug. Others want the bedclothes loose. Most children like sleep. It's natural that they should, and on the whole, they mostly sleep without much trouble. But it is a very individual matter. Terry's parents know that he sleeps like a log, whereas Monica is always restless, and there's no need to worry about either of them. A change is the thing to watch for. Here's a child who's suddenly taken to waking up in the night. She needs a lot of bedtime story before she'll go to sleep at all, and, though her mother thought she'd long outgrown a nightlight, she cried for one. What is the trouble? Not noise, not discomfort, not strange surroundings. Nothing her mother can see. Worry doesn't often show very clearly in a child's face. Behavior like Madge's, though, is a pretty sure sign. Her present trouble began when she moved up into a new class. She'd got used to a teacher who seemed very kind and gentle. The new teacher seems much more critical and severe. She may not be really, but Madge thinks she is. Lessons are harder, and the difficult ones drag on for such a long time. Nothing unusual in this, but Madge is a sensitive child. This worry is always in the background of her mind and surges forward whenever she gets bad marks. The immediate cause of tonight's trouble was an unlucky incident last Monday.
What are their names? Come on. You know who they are.
Sneak. Jackie and Richard. And Mavis and Harry.
What are their other names?
Collins.
Yes?
And Price.
Collins and Price. Ah.
Fooled him, wasn't them at all. He'll go to Jackie's mother and Harry's father.
Then who were they? Why did you tell lies?
Mummy, if somebody knew somebody's names, but not where they lived, could they find out?
Yes, dear. Of course they could.
A simple answer to a simple question, not to Madge. Oh, that awful feeling of dismay. And fear. Nothing has really happened since that unlucky day, except in Madge's mind.
Can't talk to Madge. Can't be friends with a sneak. She must be mad.
All this is a bit mixed up with school worries. And now that Madge has at last dropped into a really deep sleep, her mind has an enormous amount of sorting out to do. It's going to be very difficult to get her up in time tomorrow morning. Nothing much wrong with him, but there is, you know. He's pale and heavy-eyed, not getting enough sleep, keeping on the go with a desperate energy, but heading for some sort of illness if he goes on robbing himself of rest. All this make-believe is a substitute for the real exploits he feels he wants to achieve. suggest bed, it's a case of all dressed up and nowhere to go.
Bedtime.
He revolts at the very notion. Whatever the particular cause of the excitement, many children do at times struggle to keep away from dull, dreary, prison-like bed. One way to make bed seem more inviting is to read a story. He may or may not take to the idea immediately. You can't make the child go to sleep and you can't force him to listen. But with your own child, this isn't really difficult. You know what he likes and how to hold his attention. He's depending very much on his mother's help in crossing the threshold into sleep. Alone, he wouldn't like it, but with a familiar story and a familiar toy as companion, he calms down and feels happy about it. Sleep is a gentle thing. The very idea of going to bed should be broken gently. He'll probably wake early, eager to be on with his adventures. So, when you come to have a last look at him, it's an excellent idea to bring one of his toys all ready for the morning, when it will help him emerge from sleep into the real world again. Claire is another child who takes a long time getting to sleep. Remember, we are deliberately looking for problems. She sometimes wakes up screaming, and once or twice lately has wetted the bed. Claire's mother's the trouble here.
Claire, how are you?
Quite well, thank you.
Do you think she looks a little tired? But I suppose she has to work very hard.
We just can't stop her. And so clever, you know. And so grown up, really.
I did admire your needlework, Claire.
Oh, everything has to be just so. Claire chose that bracelet. She has good taste, hasn't she?
Poor kid. What a very subtle form of torture. And of course, quite unintentional. It's just mother, mother, mother all the time, swamping the child, setting her impossible standards. Impossible because they're adult. And Claire is a child, and no misguided notions of perfection can make her grow up before her time. Look at Claire's bedroom. There's nothing of Claire in it. This is just Mother's idea of the perfect child's room. It's also right. Claire hardly dares to touch anything. What a strain it is, trying to please Mother all the time. When she grows up, is she going to want her mother to choose window curtains for her? Or will there be a revolt? Will she go her own way in the end? Get her own back by deliberately shocking her domineering old-fashioned mother? Whatever happens, the conflict is in her mind now, and it's the cause of her nightmares and fears. This is one of her bad nightmares, being lost in a desert, utterly alone, and then always the same thing, running, running, knowing what always happens, but never stopping in time.
Whatever is the matter? There's nothing to be afraid of.
The matter is that all her life Claire has been pushed forward by her mother, never finding her own feet, never feeling the ground solid beneath her. Her father hasn't had a look in. She's been compelled to be utterly dependent on her mother. And in her dreams, Mother isn't there to hold her up. The old teddy who used to be so comforting at bedtime has been thrown away because teddy bears are childish. Well, Claire is still a child, a worried, frightened child. But it isn't the dreams which cause such terrors. It's, well, the way things are in her home. If we pretend for a moment that what goes on in the mind is a kind of game, we can imagine that black shapes are trying to thrust themselves forward and make us anxious or depressed, and that we counter these fears and worries by moving little protective shapes. In other words, by reasoning. There, check. But sometimes reason or common sense fails and a black shape does get right through. This happened last night to Mrs. Parkins. But now she's dealing with her problem. We usually can deal with our worries because, as it were, we know the moves and know we can make them. But now come down to the child's level. The same game, but how different it seems. A child has to learn the moves without being able to see them clearly, and until she can move the protective shapes properly, the black is always threatening. If only the child could get a really good look at these emotions and ideas. She doesn't realize it, but she can. During the half of her life that is sleep, her mind does see more of the game. That's why sleep is so much more important to her than to her parents, because for the child, it's a vital continuation of waking life, not just a blank interval. But how about the child who worries in bed and doesn't sleep well? She feels she dare not leave the board, but must keep on struggling to move those protective shapes. If she relaxes, an awful fear will sweep forward and never move back. A sensitive child dreads being laughed at and keeps her fears to herself. You seldom know exactly what's wrong. Nevertheless, you can do a great deal to help simply by reassuring her, making her feel that, well, we all have our worries, but we get the better of them in the end. Making her feel that you'll always be there to help when she needs you. It will take time for her fears to die down, and during that time you should try to shield her from fresh worries or excitements. Knowing now that she isn't going to be laughed at or scolded for being silly, the child is relaxing into sleep, confident, as it were, that her parents will always come to the rescue when the game gets the better of her. You can never make a child go to sleep. He has to like the idea.
But now, one morning, whatever was this? At 7 o'clock, no little red engine. Mrs. Ransom's hurry barked, bow, wow, wow. It's never been late before.
Is he going to drop off quickly? This depends a lot on how he was prepared for bed, on whether his bedtime routine was what he's always been used to. It depends also on whether his mother had the time and patience to avoid jerking him away from his toys, to lead him firmly, yet gently, away from the day towards the night.
And polished it and stoked it and got up steam. But when he took the brakes off, shh, sighed the little red engine, and didn't move. The driver tried again. Chuffa, chuffa, shh.
Sighed the little red engine. Ch-ch-ch, sighed the little red engine, and didn't move.